Good evening, everyone. I think we are off and racing. So we might take a little bit of time to get started tonight because we're having a few little technical hiccups. And unfortunately, it appears that I can only live stream over to YouTube tonight. So I'll just wait for a little bit for all of our Facebook crew to come on over because at this stage, I can't see anyone that has jumped on. So hopefully they'll be able to come soon. But while we're waiting for everyone, I think that I'll be Rhonda, yay, some people are finally coming over. That's great. Thanks, Rhonda, for saying hi. I don't know what's going on, but we're having quite a lot of techie issues. So we'll just see what happens. So if you are there, guys, just say hi. Let me know that you're there. Hey, Jade, excellent. Bridget, lovely to see you. Excellent. So we're off and racing. And hopefully all of our Facebook crew will be able to join us soon. Alrighty, so tonight I'm really excited because we're going to be jumping in and we're going to be talking all about fatigue. And this is a really, really important one for us at the moment when there are a lot of people that are experiencing a lot of fatigue with post-viruses, they're experiencing a lot of fatigue post-flus. And also, I just think everyone in general these days are experiencing some form of fatigue. So I'm really, really excited to get into this area and this topic, and also to help you guys with a few little tools of what do I eat and how does the ketogenic diet fit into this. So, and obviously using cultured foods that I'm such a fan of. Okay, so, hello, Lauren. How are you going there? So let's get started. So first of all, what is fatigue? And I think that's really important to highlight because fatigue is not being tired. So, hey, Nicole, it's good to see you guys in here. Hopefully everyone will jump on. So fatigue is not being tired. So they're two very different things. And I think it's really important to ask ourselves the question, are we just really tired? Or are we actually fatigued? And so they're two key poignant things. So for those of you who are starting to join, I would love for you to tell me, are you fatigued or are you tired? So if you want to write down your answer in the comments, let me know as I get into and delve into giving you an explanation of these things. I'd love to know which one you think you are. So obviously being tired is when you've had a late night, when you just simply haven't got enough sleep for a few nights in a row, or there's accumulation of you pushing yourself too hard. That's one thing. But then fatigue is something completely different. That is like a bone tired within. You wake up tired. You've had epic amounts of sleep. And you're barely really doing anything apart from just working and doing your basic functions in life. And you are tired all the time. Your legs feel heavy, your muscles feel heavy. You've constantly got brain fog. Your eyes get this sort of drop-off feeling where you're feeling really heavy all of the time. And you're always really having to remember, have trouble remembering things. So there's a memory issue there. And the fatigue just sets in. And it sets in for chunks of time. And the other thing with fatigue is that you feel quite wired, but you're just really tired. And often with fatigue, you can't sleep. You can't rest. You can't get that really great onset of sleep and then stay asleep all night. And so it's like a cruel, cruel thing. You're very, very, very tired, but you can't go to sleep because you're wired, because you're stimulated. So Bridget's fatigued. And Calder Croft there is fatigued and never feels rested. Yeah, so it's within your body. And you may even feel like, it's kind of like deep in your cells. I've got this deep fatigue, this deep tired. And that's what I want to talk to you about tonight. So not the tired of, I just haven't had enough sleep because I was up late last night with friends, or I haven't had enough sleep because I've got a couple of kids and it's pretty clear why I'm tired. But this is the big stuff we're going to talk about tonight, which is fatigue. So there are numerous underlying symptoms of fatigue, and the key ones, and once again, if you see me looking down, I'm looking at my notes again, and some of the key ones that where fatigue come from is gut dysbiosis. And of course, I'm going to say that first because I love investigating everything to do with the gut, and the gut is the key. The gut is the foundation. So if you're fatigued and you've got that bone tired, but you're wired and everything feels heavy and sore and brain fog and you just can't cope, we need to address your gut. We need to look at your gut. And then also, we've also got chronic infections that can drive fatigue. So it's interesting when we work with people with chronic fatigue syndrome, we always find an underlying infection to that. Often it's Epstein-Barr virus, or sometimes it can be long-term shingles virus that hasn't gone away. Sometimes it can be infections within the gut like Clostridium or Streptococcus. There are numerous infections and dysbiosis within the body that can lead to that fatigue. And so we also want to investigate and look at that. And I think that's what we're actually seeing now when people are coming up with a long COVID symptoms. We're starting to see the fallout of gut dysbiosis, the fallout of an imbalanced immune system, and then we're getting hit with this epic amount of fatigue. But really, it's our immune system and it's our body responding to those viral infections. So, hey, Kylie, how are you? Amy, sorry, you've got a combo of tired and fatigue. Yes, well, that makes life even harder because then you're really tired, but you're really wired, but you're also sometimes tired. So it's all over the place. The other reason why we can become fatigued is through toxins within our environment. So biotoxins, our external toxins, and also mold illness. Now, holy smokes, mold illness is a huge thing at the moment. If you live on the east coast of Australia, I'm sure you feel like it never stopped raining this year. And we certainly feel like that too up here on the Sunshine Coast. And when you have exposures to mold, even if you're not living in a moldy environment, but you have exposures to mold, then you're going to feel fatigued. And for some people who are susceptible to mold, or they've got mold allergies, and that often correlates mold issues and mold allergies. It's the same DNA sort of sequencing and the same DNA issues or genetic implications as celiac disease. So if you've got celiacs or you're gluten intolerant, then really be on the lookout for mold exposures as a cause of your fatigue. So a really classic example, on the weekend, my husband and I went to this, and yes, we left the kids home. Oh, and we went out on our own. Oh my God, it was one of the first times we've ever done it. It felt like it was crazy. I'm sure lots of you as parents have done that before and left your kids at home, but we're just embarking on that at the age that my kids are. And so we went to this market. And after the market, we went to this cool little shop. It was so much fun. It was like a recycled shop and really cool clothes and furniture and rugs. And it was in this old church. It was really cool. I loved being in there. But as soon as I got in there, I started to feel heightened. I started to feel something. Then my throat started hurting. And then I started getting a raspy voice. And then I started just to feel a bit headachy. And then the yawning started. And I said to my husband, look, I just don't feel right. And he always knows when I start yawning, something's happening. Something's happening within my body. There's an environmental toxin, or I've eaten a food that has sent me down and sent me into a spin. And so sure enough, I could smell it. There was mold in that environment. And my husband Mark had even talked to this lovely store owner about how do you go keeping the mold under control, because everything's recycled and secondhand and vintage, and it's in the in the Sunshine Coast. And so I felt tired that afternoon, really tired. That mold had got into my body, and those mycotoxins in my body was making my system work really hard. And so I am so fortunate, and these are all the things that you will learn on the Culture Wellness program. I'm so fortunate that I have all of my detox tools. And so I had some activated charcoal. I did a coffee enema, and then I had some extra chlorella later on that day. I did some nasal spray to clear it out of my nasal passages. And I felt much, much, much better. Within probably 4 or 5 hours, I was back on track again. But that's what can happen if you don't know that your body's susceptible to a mold exposure, and then you're tired. And so imagine if you live in that environment. Imagine if you don't know you've got mold in your house, but you're really tired. And one of the worst things that I see all the time is people with chronic fatigue syndrome. They're really tired, and they're basically at home in bed, or they're on the couch because they are so tired they can't get up and can't do anything. But they're actually at home in bed and on the couch in that moldy environment. And so it's just compounding the issue. It's catapulting this issue. And so always be curious about, where is my fatigue coming from? So don't just sort of like, oh, I'm fatigued, or even worse, if you've been diagnosed with chronic fatigue, don't sort of like, oh, I've just got chronic fatigue, oh well, or I'm just always tired, I don't know why. So don't put up with that. Be really curious. What is it in my environment? What is it in my life? What is it in my gut? Where is this fatigue coming from? Now, other issues of fatigue, those underlying causes are certainly methylation issues and certainly oxidative stress. And I'm going to go into that in a little bit. I've got a cool diagram, so wait for the diagram. Also, inflammation can cause fatigue. It's really tiring for your body to be inflamed. Your immune system is working really hard to cause that inflammation. And so you will be tired from that. And when you've got impaired detoxification, you're going to be fatigued. So there's lots of underlying symptoms as to why you're fatigued. And so there's also reasons for nutritional deficiencies, and I'll go into that in a little bit. But it's really, really important to broaden your scope to think about, why am I tired? It's really hard when you're tired to then be curious to be tired, and because you're tired. So I get all of that. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about here was that one of the biggest reasons why we're fatigued and why we just can't kind of snap back out of it and get back to it is that we've got this amazing function within our cells called the mitochondria. And that's the real kind of nitty-gritty that I'm going to focus on tonight, is our mitochondria, and how awesome our mitochondria is, because the mitochondria is how we make energy. And so on the opposite of fatigue is energy, and we want lots of it. We want energy for our detox to work. We want energy for our immune system to work. Our brain needs so much energy to work, so we don't have a foggy brain. And so how do we make energy? Where do we get this from? What's the best way that I can plug myself in and then, like a battery, charge my energy, and so I can feel really full of beans and I can wake up in the morning and I'm ready to go? And that is where your mitochondria comes in. So our mitochondria is pretty amazing. And I'm just going to go and get you, so bear with me. I'm just going to go and get you one of these awesome diagrams that talks to us about what our mitochondria does. And so I'm just going to pop it up in the screen here. So Amy said, oh, wow, what about if your kids are exposed to this and trying to detox? Yeah, so if you're trying to detox your kids and you're constantly being exposed to mold, you're not going to make much headway. And so we've really got to really address all the environmental toxins so we can actually detox our bodies. Otherwise, it's just like, tipping out the bucket and then it refills straight away. It's got like the leaky tap and you can never really empty that bucket completely. So that's what happens with those, with making sure that when you're detoxifying, you've got all these things sorted out. All right, so here's a really cool diagram. And this is the major functions of our mitochondria. So our mitochondria sits within every single part of our cell, and our mitochondria is responsible for making cellular energy and for that energy production. It's responsible for calcium homeostasis. It's responsible and promotes cell growth and mitogenesis or regenesis, where we actually multiply and make more healthy cells, which is really key to making sure that we have longevity and that our body is healthy. It generates oxidative radicals that help to counteract oxidative stress. Very important at this time when we're exposed to so many free radicals. And it supports our nervous system. It helps to build a healthy nervous system, a nice smooth nervous system. It helps us to produce heat. So all you thyroid people out there that are freezing in the wintertime and can never get warm, those people who've got Raynaud's issues and Raynaud's problems, but especially our dear thyroid people that we work with all the time, this is a big one for heat production. So it also helps with metabolism, and it also helps with that cellular respiration. And the list goes on. But the biggest major function of the mitochondria that we are focusing on tonight is if we want to make energy, we have to love up this mitochondria that sits within every one of our cells. So you will all remember the word mitochondria by the end of tonight, I hope. Okay, so the next thing that I want to show you is what is the research showing us that if our mitochondria is not functioning effectively, what are some of the outcomes? What can happen? And no surprises, the first one that you can see there on that list on the bottom left-hand side is chronic fatigue. So when the mitochondria is not functional, there's a dysfunction there, you will have chronic fatigue. Diabetes is correlated through the research with mitochondrial dysfunction, and also metabolic inflexibility or metabolic diseases, metabolic problems. Huntington's disease, developmental delay in kids, cognitive issues in kids such as autism, ADHD, OCD, dyspraxia, dyslexia. The list goes on of all of the, as I call them, labels that we're seeing with kids at the moment. Do they really have that label? Or could we be more curious and look at what's going on with their gut, what's going on with their mitochondria, and why is their brain not activating and appropriately expanding and the neurological pathways appropriately working? Could it be mitochondrial dysfunction? Cerebral palsy, Parkinson's disease, epilepsy, cardiomyopathy, and then, of course, mitochondrial disease, lots of muscular issues. We see, once again, lots and lots and lots of learning disabilities are related to mitochondrial dysfunction, fibromyalgia, and Alzheimer's. And so the list goes on of what this mitochondria can impact and how, if it doesn't get what it needs, how it can go downhill. And so I'm hoping that you've all got sort of, I wonder how my mitochondria is going. I wonder if it needs some attention. Okay, So the biggest thing about fatigue is that your body doesn't make energy. And so when your body doesn't make energy, then we can't do a lot of the processes in the body, and we can't mop up environmental toxins within the body. And when we aren't making that energy, we are exposed to ill health. And so I want to show you one more diagram, because it's just such an important thing when it comes to how important this mitochondria is. So when we have deficiencies of mitochondria, so let's look at the left-hand side of this diagram. So we've got the mitochondrial nutrients, so the things that we need from our mitochondria to be able to have buoyant energy, and I'll show them to you in a minute. And we want to find them from our diet, and we want to find that from our lifestyle. But we've got these mitochondrial nutrients that we need. So let's take short chain fatty acids, for example, as one of the things that our mitochondria needs, or butyrate that we have in butter. As you can see on the left-hand side, if you are deficient in those nutrients, it actually increases the damage of that mitochondria. And therefore, we have an increase in oxidative stress. So huge amounts of stress on our body. And then when we have that oxidative stress, it accelerates that aging process. It puts us at risk. It increases our risk of all of those degenerative disorders. And it also enhances and progresses those degenerative disorders. So at this stage, it's really, really interesting that if you have an early onset of Alzheimer's, for example, or if you currently have diabetes, or if you have a child that has got a learning disorder, then right now is the time to address your mitochondria to stop and slow down that progression. And for a lot of people, we can actually really support to turn that around. And so it's never too late. If that's a question that you want to ask me, it's never too late. We need these nutrients to be able to create that antioxidant defense within our body. And that's what happens on the other side. If we have sufficient nutrients, then suddenly our mitochondria is firing on all cylinders. And we get this thing called mitogenesis, where we make more mitochondria and more mitochondria. And suddenly we're buzzing, full of mitochondria. We're making energy. And then, as you can see on the other side there, we actually increase our oxidative defense. So our ability to defend ourselves against oxidative stress and, lots and lots of oxidants within the body. And we start to create antioxidants. And then that delays the aging process. It reduces our risk of degenerative disorders, and it also slows down any progression of what currently might be happening. And so this little powerhouse, this mitochondria, is where it's all at. It's where we need to focus on. So before we get into what's going on with our bodies and how come my mitochondria is not working very well, we need to look at our leaky gut again. We need to go back to the gut, because to be able to fuel our mitochondria and give it what it needs, one of the greatest things that we need to do is to make sure that we have sealed up our gut and we have looked at our intestinal permeability and made sure that our gut is nice and robust and that we don't have a leaky gut. So that's the first thing. Then we also need to know that from our gut, we have a diversity of microbes within our gut that release metabolites that are called short-chain fatty acids. So the beneficial metabolites called short-chain fatty acids, because those short-chain fatty acids then feed the mitochondria, and through the process of ATP, so at the energy production, we are able to make energy in our mitochondria. But if we don't have all of the beneficial microbes in our gut that make short-chain fatty acids that then support our mitochondria to make energy, boom, suddenly we've got fatigue issues. So yes, the mitochondria is the powerhouse, and yes, we can do heaps of stuff for our mitochondria, but the fuel source for our mitochondria starts within the gut. And so that's why we need to address the gut and look at, are we making energy through the gut? Do we have those microbes? And if we don't have those microbes, what's the dysfunction in the gut that is stopping that? What's causing us to not be able to have those beneficial microbes to create energy? Is it a parasite? Is it an overgrowth, a bacterial overgrowth? What's the reason why I can't make short chain fatty acids? And I want you to be curious about that. I want you to question that. And of course, as you guys know who are listening on Monday night, it's not like, oh, I wonder how I'm going to work this out and I wish I only knew. And it's not as if we don't have access to this information, because we can test for that for you at Culture Wellness, and we can look at your stool test, so your microbe stool test, and we can see, do you have the microbes to make those short chain fatty acids in your gut? Does your gut have the diversity that it needs to be able to support your mitochondria? It's really important. We can't fix a fatigue problem with more coffee. We can't fix a fatigue problem with more sugar. And we certainly can't fix a fatigue problem with uppers and all sorts of different things, or just sleeping more. It doesn't work. And that's why a lot of you will probably feel like you're, it doesn't matter how much I sleep, I just can't seem to have energy. What is going on? Where's my energy? Okay, so we love our mitochondria now. So that's very, very clear. So when we look at what impacts our mitochondria, some of the things that stop our mitochondria from functioning is, number one, our gut not working, and therefore it doesn't get the nutrients and those short chain fatty acids. But our mitochondria is also impacted by other external issues like mycotoxins and mold, but also a lack of sunlight. And this is a really, really key, important one. So when you work with us on the Culture Wellness program, we are always banging on about, how much sunlight did you get today? How much sunlight did you get this week? Did you happen to see the sun rise? Were you outside for more than 5 minutes hanging out the washing on the line? How long do you spend outside? And so I'd love you guys to type in the comments and let me know. And be like, there's no judgment here. We're Culture Wellness Crew. We don't have time for judgment. We just want to solve things and help you. So even if you say, oh, actually, you know what? I haven't been outside for 3 days. I just want to know. I want a barometer for you guys. So pop in the comments and let me know, per day on an average, how much time do you spend outside? Because the sun is our greatest battery. The sun is how we charge our mitochondria, like what the food we eat and those short chain fatty acids. And so on program, and when we're working with someone to be able to get energy back, one of the biggest prescriptions that we give to people is to be outside. Now, everyone tries it and says to me, well, I live in Tasmania and it's pretty freaking cold, or I live in Norway. I've had clients from Norway and I live in Norway, and I live up north and there's actually no sun for about 4 months of the year. And that's a valid call, and it's something that we need to look at. So now there's actually things that you can do. So the first thing you can do is, you can still go outside in the wintertime. You still have exposure to light. So it doesn't have to be big baking summer sun. It's just exposure to light. And so you put on the winter woolies, get everything on, and go outside and have that exposure for as long as possible. So you can still do it even if you're in a cold climate. But if you are really fatigued, and if you have a significant amount of issues with fatigue, then you may need to kind of level up if you live in those colder climates and you don't have a lot of access to sunlight or to light. So there's a red light therapy that you can do. And the cool thing is that there's lots of places popping up around Australia and the world at the moment where it's actually a light that you can use and you sit in front of, and it's set to the red light and it stimulates that mitogenesis. It stimulates your mitochondria to start to make new mitochondria that's going to help you to make more energy. And so you may need to either go to a place and have some of that red light therapy, or you may also may want to purchase one. So I've actually got a little red light that I have at home, and Kylie will probably find a link for it. Sorry, Kylie, I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about the proton light, but if you can find that one. So I've got a little red light that if I have done a lot of work on a computer during the day and I haven't had much exposure, then I will actually put that red light on my face at nighttime. But I also am very fortunate. I have a sauna in my house that has got a full panel of red light. So I can charge back up again. So I can get in front of that red light and I can replenish. And that has been really important for me recently because of, going through COVID, going through colds and flus and so forth. My energy levels really, really dropped. And I was actually just like, I'm tired. This is just not my usual self. So I went back to my old tools. I went out into the sun, even though it's cold, and especially with your tummy, that's one of the main, that's where all the receptors are, where you can get all of that direct light and it will stimulate your mitochondria. But I also went back to sitting in front of my red light. And so make sure that you're getting lots of light because, it's free. You don't have to have any fancy this or fancy that. You don't have to buy a supplement. You don't have to do anything. You just have to be in nature and go outside. So Rachel said 1 hour to 4 hours. That's so cool, Rachel, depending on nature walks with my boys. Some days not as much. That's really cool. I crave sunlight. That's interesting. I used to when I was young too, on my skin, especially during winter. Lately, it hasn't been enough due to the rain. Yeah. And I'm sorry, but it looks like someone has jumped in there with some dating site comments. So I'll just ignore that. Amy said through the week, less than 5 minutes. Yeah, that's the way it goes, Amy. People have trouble getting outside. And I might be outside doing family activities for a couple of hours on the weekend. Okay. And Bridget, 2 hours at least more on the weekends. That's awesome. So lots of people are able to spend some time outside. Alrighty. So the other thing that is really, really great for feeding your mitochondria is to ensure that your diet is really focused on supporting the nutrients that your mitochondria needs. So diet is absolutely key in this situation. Oh, thank you, Kylie. I was hoping you would block them. I just saw it there and thought, what is going on there? This is a bit scary. And then Jade, you're a legend. So Jade is one of our amazing naturopaths at Culture Wellness, and she's on the comments tonight. And as she said there, Akkermansia, Bifidostrains, Faecalibacterium, Lactobacillus strains. These are all the bacterial strains that we see in the microba test results when we look at them with our beautiful clients in clinic. And that's what we want to see in your gut because that's the microbes, or they're the microbes that are producing those short chain fatty acids. So some of you who are listening tonight may have done your microba test already. So I bet you're already in there checking it out. Do I have any Akkermansia? Do I have any of those Faecalibacteriums? And have I got these things to be able to create energy? So don't forget light. And if you are chronically fatigued, then I would encourage you to actually go and get some light therapy. And then nutrients, as we said, is the next one. Now, the thing about the mitochondria is, remember when we talked about on Monday night about it only takes 3 steps for your body to be able to convert fat into energy, and it doesn't have much of that oxidative stress. Whereas if you burn glucose, it takes around about 11 steps to create energy and a lot of oxidative stress. And so we know that there is an immense amounts of power when it comes to creating energy in the body when you go into ketosis. And so that's why I love ketosis so much for people that have chronic illnesses and certainly illnesses where they've got extreme fatigue and brain fog, because suddenly your mitochondria is getting all those ketones. Your mitochondria loves ketones. And because you're not creating so much oxidative stress because you've only got 3 steps to make energy instead of 11, then your mitochondria can go to making energy and cellular repair and cleanup rather than trying to mop up all of this stress that your diet is creating. And so being in ketosis is your superpower when it comes to making energy. It's one of the first things that people talk about when they first get into ketosis. It's like, wow, I'm just really cognitively alert. Or someone will be, like I have a lot of chronic fatigue crew that I work with, and it's like, wow, today I did the washing, I was able to clean out the pantry, I spent more time awake, I went for a walk around the block. And for some people that I work with, they can maybe only do one of those things a day, and they're able to do more than that in a day. And this happens quite quickly as you get into ketosis. And so eating a beautiful, beneficial, therapeutic ketogenic diet, including those cultured foods, enables you to feed that mitochondria. It enables you to make more energy. And that's the sweet spot. That's where you want to be, is making much more energy. Hang on. And so we take out the carbohydrates in a ketogenic diet and we replace it with amazing nutrients from cultured foods, so beneficial foods. So fermented foods are also a key part of making energy, because fermented foods have, especially the cultured wellness cultures that some of you may already be using, or some of you may have seen as you get to know us at Cultured Wellness, we've got our incredible cultures. And our cultures have those lactobacillus strains and those bifido strains. And those strains are the ones that support making short-chain fatty acids, helping the mitochondria, and making more energy. So on a daily basis, are you having your fermented foods? Are you having those foods that are feeding the gut and then creating energy for you? They literally create energy. But we're certainly not told in today's current environment, we're not told, oh, you're going to make heaps of energy if you have a bowl of Culture Wellness yogurt or if you have some sauerkraut. We're kind of told that we need to have small snacks, every 2 hours, and we've got to keep our carbs up. Unfortunately, our food pyramid that is still taught in schools, that as a teacher myself, I used to teach, it's the food plate now, but I used to teach the food pyramid when I first started. And it has grains as the most amount of food that should make up your diet in a day. But when we look at the function of the body from an integrative, holistic perspective, when we really think about it and we really look at it, why would we be eating those grains? Why would we be eating all those carbohydrates when it makes so much waste in our body, those toxic waste that puts so much pressure on our body? And so we want to cut those carbs out and we want to cut those sugars out and replace them with incredible fermented foods. Now, we certainly don't want to get rid of the nutrients. We don't want to get rid of the incredible, amazing polyphenols and richness of nutrients in beetroot, for example. But beetroot's got quite a lot of carbohydrates and sugar. And for a time on the Culture Wellness Program, we will ask people to only ferment that instead of eating it unfermented because of the sugars in it. So when you get into having a therapeutic culture wellness diet using the cultures, you're not missing out on nutrients. So you're having a fermented beetroot, and fermented beetroot, wow, it's amazing for oxygenation of the body. It's incredible for liver function with betaine. So you're getting all of this richness. Those polyphenols feed the Akkermansia, they feed those lactobacillus strains, they feed those bifidose strains. But by fermenting the beetroot, you've taken out the sugar that is causing that metabolic waste within your body. So it's just the coolest thing ever, and it's so simple. So, and this comes back to my question, and someone raised it in the Facebook, which was really cool to see. They were saying, hang on a minute, like you talked about a salami and cheese ketogenic diet, and there was a bit of confusion there. And I was like, no, this is the problem. We have in diet culture now, in gym culture now, workout culture, weight loss culture now currently, we have this sort of like, oh, do the keto diet. And it's full of shakes, and it is literally like just eat cheese and just eat nut butter, just have cream cheese, have protein, and that's all you need. And that is one of the worst things that you can do for your body. Yes, you can lose weight doing that, but you'll put it all back on as soon as you stop eating a ketogenic diet. But you're not feeding your gut microbes. So you might make some energy out of being in ketosis, but it's not fueling the system, the powerhouse. And those kinds of diets put a lot of stress on your detoxification system. They put a lot of stress on the body. And so when I'm talking about a cultured wellness ketogenic diet, it's a therapeutic diet incorporating those fermented foods. And you don't miss out on the nutrients. So another example of nutrients that we really need a lot of at the moment that helps with cleaning up that oxidative stress in the body. It's a real master antioxidant. It's a good old-fashioned vitamin C. And so our diet needs to be beautifully rich in vitamin C. So we're cleaning up all of that waste in the body. And so we're not tired, because remember, that makes us tired, having that waste in the body. But we have this perception that vitamin C is only in oranges, or we have this perception that it's only in fruit. And so when, you're going into a ketogenic diet, you often, you don't eat the fruit because it's full of sugar and it can upset your balance of getting into ketosis. And this is where the beauty of having the cultured foods is. You can ferment, like we have an orange juice kefir. And so you can actually ferment your orange juice. And so you're left with a richness of vitamin C, probiotics from fermenting it, and, a beautiful tasting orange juice, like a beautiful rich drink. And also you start to look at other places that you can get vitamin C from. So sauerkraut, interestingly, has a huge amount of vitamin C in it. And so by, only having fermented fruits, a lot of people say, I'm going to miss out on my vitamin C. I need vitamin C because it's wintertime. But you absolutely don't. That's not the only place you can get it. So there's a wonderful story about Captain Cook, actually, that he was one of the only ships to not get scurvy when he was on his voyages. And the reason why he didn't get scurvy with all of his sailors and everyone that went with him was that he had sauerkraut on board. Now, we know that scurvy is a vitamin C deficiency, and they all used to get it when they were out to sea because they didn't have any fresh fruit and vegetables. But little did they know that this sauerkraut was the best thing that was ever going to happen to them. And it had so much vitamin C in it, and it was able to support them. But obviously it didn't have the sugar, and it had the probiotics in it. And so everywhere you turn when it comes to cultured foods, you're nourishing yourself. You're adding in extra nutrients, and you're able to support yourself whilst you're eating a diet that's lower in sugar and lower in carbohydrates. So when you have a therapeutic ketogenic diet using fermented foods, you are not nutrient deprived, you're not hungry, and you're certainly not going to have any issues with gut dysbiosis, or, a lot of people, there's a bit of a myth around about, well, if you go into ketosis, then you're just eating, the salami and bacon and cream cheese and so forth, and it's bad for your gut. And that's certainly the case if you're doing a gym culture weight loss kind of ketogenic diet. But that's not the one that I advocate at all. So hopefully you guys can see the nuances of those two there. Okay, so let's dive into a little bit more about that nutrition. And I also wanted to just I wanted to go back a little bit and talk about fatigue and cortisol. So I'm just going to make a note there because I wanted to talk about that some more. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to show you this diagram here. It's a little bit small. I'm so sorry about that. So what I will do is I will share this diagram with you in a Facebook post, and we'll pop it up after I finish the live. And so you'll be able to see this and read the detail. But basically, there are some key nutrients that supports that mitochondria. And interestingly, they're all the key nutrients that you're going to find in a therapeutic diet, so a therapeutic ketogenic diet. So key nutrients like green tea, for example, your B vitamins that you need to get from liver patés and proteins. Really, really important to be able to get your amino acids in. So L-carnitine is one that's in here as an important nutrient for protecting us with antioxidant stress, and to being able to support liver function and also brain function for those neurological disorders. And with L-carnitine, like the good old-fashioned bone broth, is such a great way of getting in a robust amount of those essential amino acids. Resveratrol is really important for your mitochondrial health. And we've actually been prescribing that quite a lot for people with long COVID or post-COVID fatigue. So resveratrol really supports that ATP production, and it really supports mopping up all of those, free radicals within the body. And so, the Italians have got it right when it comes to, they have a glass of wine every night. That resveratrol for them is just amazing. And it's funny, like chocolate has resveratrol in it. Coffee has resveratrol in it. Green tea has. And there's all these amazing foods that are just so nourishing and so awesome. And they all have that resveratrol in there that is going to support your mitochondria and mop up those antioxidants. So we also need our omega-3 fatty acids. So they're really important for heart health, but they support the restoration and also the extra reproduction or production of new mitochondria. Now, coenzyme in Q10 is also really important for fatigue and energy issues and for supporting that growth of the mitochondria. And so we often use CoQ10 for, once again, all of those chronic inflammatory issues that we were talking about. And for, people that have a lot of cognitive disorders, it's certainly something that we use a lot. And so also quercetin, it replenishes and restores the mitochondria, and it also enhances those ATP levels. And it's an anti-inflammatory. And so it, when our bodies are inflamed, which we were talking about the other night, and we've also got a mitochondrial dysfunction, so our mitochondria is not working, so we're really tired, and then our gut's not working, sometimes we need these supports. And we can get a lot of these from our food, but for some of our clients that we work with in clinic, we do have to also prescribe some of these supplements for a time to kind of get you back on track and get you back out there again. So, and things like alpha lipoic acid there as well. It really supports that mitochondria, and this, supports the liver as well. So, you can see that there's lots and lots of nutrients there. And so our diet has to be absolutely on point when it comes to nurturing ourselves. Now, the reason why I wanted to come back and talk about fatigue and cortisol and fatigue and our hormones is that I see all the time nutrient deficiencies, a poor diet, high stress levels, cortisol levels, and therefore someone who's really struggling to eat the right foods for themselves and can't manage their cravings and can't just seem to be able to, like, why can't I stick with it? Why can't I do this? So I want to unpack that for you because it's very powerful and it's a really potent thing that I need to help you to understand. Okay, so when our cortisol levels, which is our body's ability to kind of get up and get going, and we need really great cortisol levels. And so in the morning, our cortisol levels should be at the highest so we can wake up. It gets us up out of bed and it helps us to start the day. So not all cortisol is bad. When I first started doing a lot of reading in this area, I sort of was like, oh, wow, cortisol's bad. It puts me into a fight or flight response. And, it can really impact your metabolic health. It can really impact your cravings. And I just didn't understand it very well. And then when I started to delve deeper into it and understand it more, I understood that there's a time and a place for cortisol. And the time for cortisol is in the morning. The sun's out, the daylight is ready, we're feeling activated, our cortisol is appropriately stable, and we're up and we're motivated and we're ready to go. And then what should happen is your cortisol should gently, gently, gently decline. And so then at the end of the day, we should start to feel tired. We should start to feel sleepy. And then our cortisol drops off and our melatonin, which is our sleep hormone, and also the hormone that is a precursor to serotonin, which is our joyful, happy neurotransmitters, our cortisol comes down and our melatonin goes up and we go off to sleep. And we get this awesome amount of sleep, and the onset's great, easy to get into sleep. We stay asleep and we're restored when we wake up. But what we normally see and what normally happens is in the morning, cortisol is just completely bottomed out. There's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. And so people are really, I call it flogging the horse. People are really having to pull it together to get up in the morning because their body, the mechanics, everything about it can't do it. So they kind of like stumble out of bed and they get in the shower and, oh, I can't do anything before I have my first coffee. And, people are like, no, I can't have a meeting pre-coffee, or I can't do this pre-coffee or that coffee, or always looking for that stimulant to be able to elevate the cortisol, flog the horse, bring the cortisol up. So you're already starting flatlined. And then unfortunately what happens is the day goes on and everything seems to just not go so well. And people are then really tired and really fatigued. And then they start to actually increase their cortisol levels. And often what I see is between about 9 and 10 o'clock at night, cortisol levels are through the roof. And you're like, oh, I'm going to do the washing. I'm going to vacuum the house. I'm going to clear out that pantry. I'm going to start ironing and all of this kind of stuff. And, now's the time that I'm going to, go through all of the family photos and make a photo album. It's like, no, it's 10 o'clock. You should be off to bed. That's when in our sleep cycle, our hormones are regenerating at 10 o'clock at night. We need to be asleep. not doing jobs, not being stimulated by lights. And of course, lights in the house and junk light are very impacting on your mitochondria. And I normally wear blue blockers, which I don't have with me actually tonight, but I actually wear blue blockers to help to stimulate that melatonin production and to turn off those cortisol levels and to help my mitochondria. So I'll go through that at another time. But so what happens is that the cortisol's gone up in the evening, and then what's happening to your melatonin? Your melatonin can't be up at the same time as your cortisol. One's got to be up and the other one down, or vice versa. And so the cortisol levels through the roof. You suddenly decided that you're going to, mop out the pantry at 10 o'clock at night, and then the melatonin drops off and you're like, oh, well, I'm not sleepy, so I might just sit down and watch a Netflix. And then, I'm still not sleepy. I might take my laptop with me to my bed and just pop it on the bed, and I'll just watch something and hopefully fall asleep. And it's a horrible, horrible, vicious cycle that if you don't know you're in that cycle, and it's like, oh, I just can't sleep. I'm really fatigued, but I can't sleep. I'm not very good at sleep. But when you think about what's happening in the day, there's no wonder you can't sleep. Now, when your cortisol levels are that high, your body naturally wants more energy because it thinks that it's under attack, that there's an alarm bell going off. And so your body, when you're in that fight or flight and that high cortisol response, which is the racing heart, the anxiety, this, everything's so stressful, I just can't cope, I can't do anything, and oh my gosh, and there's too much to do, and you feel overwhelmed and you feel stressed. And so when that's happening, your body responds by your insulin levels going up to match that cortisol, and then you want to eat. And it's generally crunchy, carby foods that you want to eat, or quick fix, like high calorie foods. So ice creams, really crappy, like chocolate that, I don't know, Cadbury's chocolate, or like shortbreads or donuts, or really high caloric food that has a crunch. So there's a sensory thing involved in it, but also it's quick. It's quick calories. And because your body thinks that there's this big alarm stress bell going on and that it needs to fuel to be able to plan for this attack. Now, our bodies haven't really evolved very much since, eons of time. And so it still does really respond to that primal response. And so our brain will start to respond in that amygdala state, the fear state, the primal state. And it's like, okay, so we're under attack. Quick, eat heaps of food because I need all of that food to go to my muscles and to my extremities so I can run away. I can go and fight the tiger and fight the bear. And so that's why we find ourselves at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because our cortisol just keeps going up and up and up because we just keep getting stressed and stressed and stressed, especially if you've got to go and pick the kids up and you've got to do, after school sport. You still haven't finished your work. You don't know what you're going to cook the kids for dinner. All of this kind of stuff. And if we haven't been able to manage our cortisol, if we haven't been able to manage that stress response, and if we haven't been able to have appropriate food during the day to nourish our body, to build energy that fuels our brain, then we start making poor choices because our body just wants quick energy as opposed to nutrients. And so what I'll see is there'll be that classic kind of picture of an extremely fatigued, and mostly female, extremely fatigued female. It's horrible to see it. Just so like this, got nothing. And it's, the coffee in the morning and just a bit of nibble at a breakfast. I don't feel hungry, not hungry, don't want to eat. And then a little nibble at lunch. And then by about 3 or 4 o'clock, it's like, I'm so tired, and barely eaten anything all day, but nibbled on things. Now, you don't have an appetite when you're in that cortisol response. No appetite at all, because when you go into that cortisol response, your systems of digestion shut down. So the cephalic phase in the brain, which is the first part of the brain that registers digestion, can only really work when you're in rest and digest. and it can only work when you sit mindfully at the table and think, oh, I'm going to have my breakfast now, and then I'm going to have my lunch, and I'm going to have a beautiful amount of protein. I'm going to have some sauerkraut. I'm going to have some vegetables, and I'm going to really nourish my body because I've got a big afternoon ahead. And I'm just going to sit and I'm going to eat. I'm going to nourish myself. So it's not very often that we do that. And then there's this sort of like, I haven't eaten. The body gets depleted. The mitochondria gets depleted. And then we stop making energy. We can't think straight. Got no energy. Then we stress and go into that fight or flight. I'll have a chocolate bar, thanks. I'll have a bag of chips, thanks. I'll have a croissant. I'll have a whatever. I mean, there's lots of healthy things and that people will go and grab and eat that's not fueling the mitochondria, nourishing their gut bugs, not supporting their immune system. It's a quick fix because the body is alarmed. It's in that state of fight or flight. And so then what happens is that we then get stimulated by this carby food, and we get stimulated by that, and then it kind of all kicks off and crescendos at night, and then you can't rest and go to sleep. And so how you sleep at night, and a restorative sleep, how that happens at night starts in the morning. You build your melatonin, which is your sleep hormone, by being outside, seeing the sun, getting natural daylight first thing in the morning. So it doesn't start, melatonin doesn't get built, doesn't start at night. It starts in the morning. You build it in the morning. And we can stop those cortisol crescendos and those really like hard sort of cravings, and we stop all of those things and the poor food choices and all of those habits that we want to get out of. We stop that by managing what we eat in the morning and what we choose to nourish ourselves with, and our behaviors in the morning that sets up our gut, our mitochondria, our immune system. It just sets us up to be nourished and to be able to manage life joyfully. And so there's lots and lots of concepts that we're talking about here. We're talking about the gut making energy. We're talking about the infections and viral loads and all those things stopping us from making that energy within our gut and causing leaky gut and causing issues. And we're also talking about this overarching issue of stress response and cortisol, and how if we are in the end in this stress response state and a fear state, and we're constantly on the go and all of that kind of stuff, then it's going to have this cascade effect of making, the food choices that you don't want to make. That's why you're here learning about that stuff, about all of this. You don't want to make those food choices, but you don't know what to do, or you can't do it, or you can't implement it. But that's because of the stress response and not setting your day up from the start. And therefore, you're constantly fatigued and tired. And so it might start out that it's a busy time and you are just tired, but if we continue with those patterns of behavior, and so unfortunately some people like have, busy with uni, like in, 20 years ago, busy with uni, eating poorly. Most uni students get, glandular fever and Epstein-Barr. So you've got like the trifecta there of stress, lack of sleep, partying, not eating well, because uni students eat 2-minute noodles, and they might be just tired and it might be okay. But then when it really kicks in, when someone's, had a child, or real stress like work stress or life stress, or, there's a big traumatic event. And then it really starts to get into that deep, deep fatigue, because the body just can't come back from that. It can't get better from that. And so it's really, really interesting when we look at fatigue. It is so much bigger, and it's more complex. And so therefore, it's really important to address every single one of all the things that all of the things that we've talked about, and creating great habits and great patterns, and also creating a really nourishing diet and lifestyle and food choices that are going to serve all of the kind of engine room, or the heavy lifters in your body, and all the different parts and systems of your body that help you to make energy. So I'm really hoping that quite a few light bulbs have gone off for you guys tonight when it comes to the fact that energy isn't just literally a caloric thing of, I eat this much energy and I make energy out the other side. So if I have this Mars bar, suddenly I've got energy. It just is not that simple. Not that simple at all. If I ate a Mars bar, I'd just be exhausted. It would just flatten me to the floor. I'd just be so tired, because my gut would be like, I'm sorry, what is that? And there's so many toxins and so much sugar, and that's not going to nourish your nervous system. It's not going to nourish your gut. It's certainly not going to support your immune system. It's going to turn on all those inflammatory pathways in the body, and then you're inflamed, and then you're tired. And that's just what one Mars bar does. But imagine if you have got into a routine or a pattern that doesn't serve you, and you're having foods that don't serve you during the day. Every time you eat that food, you're creating that storm of inflammation, immune response, poor energy. And so we really have to work out, what are we nourishing ourselves with? The other thing that I see with fatigued people is they're just simply not eating enough. So there's this horrible dogma, and, pop me a comment if you guys see this, but there's this horrible dogma that, especially for women, that if you want to stay within an appropriate weight range for you, then you basically need to eat hardly any calories and trash yourself at the gym. Now, it's great that we're starting to see a little bit of a change with that, and we're starting to see a better conversation with that. But this whole concept of calories in, calories out, and then exercise really hard, it does not bear well, and it doesn't work. And we end up seeing people with chronic fatigue from going too hard at CrossFit, going too hard with their exercise, and not eating enough, and certainly not eating enough protein, not eating enough good quality fats, and then really just bottoming out, really finding that their bodies have run out of energy, they've run out of nutrients, and they've gone into full survival mode as opposed to thriving. And so remember, when you're in that survival mode, you're not hungry, therefore it gets harder to nourish yourself, and also you don't feel like eating much. And so I see women all the time, they're barely eating anything, and they're really struggling with inflammation in their body, which of course we know is what I call inflammation. Everyone calls all of that extra fat that they're carrying on their body. It's just inflammation, but they're carrying that on their bodies because their body thinks that they're in a state of famine because they're not eating appropriately. The body thinks that it's in a state of famine because there's not enough nutrients available. It hasn't been fed any B vitamins recently. It hasn't been fed any, beautiful fermented foods. It hasn't been getting those nutrients that we talked about in that last slide. And so definitely, if the body thinks it's in survival mode, it literally shuts off functions. Your hair starts falling out, your nails and your skin look really crap, and you just start only functioning on the basics of the body, not the external parts of your body. And so you're reserving all of that energy. And so if you've got whispers of, my skin isn't the same, my nails aren't the same, gosh, my hair's been falling out. Are you eating enough? Are you nourishing your body? Or are you just quickly just tapping into something? And, be curious about these things and sit with it and see how you go. Okay, I've just realized the time. I'm so sorry. I'm keeping you all up too late. So I'm sorry about that. So I'm just going to go through some of the questions there. So I think Jade's already asked how melatonin works. So yes, so she's just talked about that there. So with someone has resorted to melatonin as was so fatigued, even though I get outside. Yeah, so you may actually, Katerina, you may have a bit of a cortisol issue going on here, that you can't make that melatonin because of that high cortisol. Or let's not forget that we make those neurotransmitters from our gut microbiome. So if you are really struggling with your melatonin levels and sleep, you've got to look to your gut. You've got to test your gut. Really, really important. Okay, so I think I have covered everything unless Kylie or Jade want to pop something up just to let me know. Yeah, she's right. Jade is absolutely fantastic. She's just so knowledgeable. It's so awesome that she's on here tonight and able to share all her knowledge. And Kylie's on there as well, sharing her knowledge. And so with regards to the testing, someone asked me today, what tests do we use? So just to confirm, we use the microba test. So it's a really important one. And so we've got at the moment an offer that working in our tailored one-on-one program, we're actually offering to have your microba test included as an extra bonus in that one-on-one program. So that's a pretty cool thing to have your test included in the program. So if you've been considering doing the one-on-one program, I would really take up on that offer. It's a huge saving to have that test paid for and part of the program. Another cool thing that someone asked me today, someone mentioned today that I just didn't think of. It's just such assumed knowledge at Cultured Wellness. I didn't even consider that I having to talk about it. So I really wanted to mention it tonight. We often say on our programs that the program is 8 weeks, which is the Kickstarter program, or we talk about the one-on-one program being 6 months. Or we also talk about our optimal gut health program, which is 6 months of self-paced learning. Now, even though there's timeframes that we put on that, you don't have to keep up with those timeframes, and you always have access to the information. You have what they call lifetime access. I always think that's really funny, but so you've got lifetime access. So there's one of the bundles that we have at the moment is doing the Kickstarter. So you learn about sun, you learn about the mitochondria, you learn how to ferment, you learn about the oral microbiome, you learn about how to make energy, what to eat, how awesome butter is and how important butter is to make butyrate. And butyrate is the short-chain fatty acid that feeds the mitochondria. And you learn the coolest stuff in the Kickstarter program. And as part of that bundle at the moment, we've got the Kickstarter program and we've got the microba test and consult included into that as well. But even though it says 8 weeks on there, it's self-paced and you always have access to it. So you can read all of the modules and just take your time, gather your information, and then when you feel ready, you can get started. Or you can do some of the learnings, and if you've got a wedding or you've got something going on, you can take that time to go and do those things, and then you can come back to it again and keep learning in the Kickstarter space. And also with the 6-month program, the self-paced online 6-month program, the optimal gut healing one, That's the same. Yes, it's 6 months, but that's 6 months of learning of all these incredible modules that we give you, but it doesn't mean you have to do it all in 6 months. And you have lifetime access to those modules and to all that information. And it's the same with the one-on-one program. You've got lifetime access to everything. And so when I work with people one-on-one, I have this kind of commitment to that person that I'm going to be working with them for probably around 2 years as they get better and as they get stronger. And so that first 6 months is really about bedding down the foundations, getting the tools right, understanding why your body is doing what it's doing and what can we do to change those pathways and change those behaviors and set up good strategies and learn all of those techniques. And once we bed down that information, then we can keep working together. And so, yeah, I didn't realize we probably don't have it written everywhere enough and in loud enough words for you guys to see it. It's just such assumed knowledge that this is information we want to share with people and we want them to always know it and learn it and have access to it. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, Erin, what are the main types of foods you suggest for nutritional ketosis and how do we know when we're in ketosis? So the main foods that I suggest, which we teach on the Culture Wellness program, is proteins, the lower carbohydrate vegetables, really, really good quality fats. So yes, butter, ghee, olive oils, avocados, so fermented avocados, and coconut oil, those good quality fats, and also the fermented foods. So keeping it into that nutritional therapeutic ketosis and taking out all of the inflammatory foods, gluten, dairy, sugar, grains, and nightshades. We take out nightshades as well because they're so inflammatory. And so we get you into this space where we can really see what's happening with your body. We test and measure ketosis via 3 avenues: breath, blood, or in urine. And so we often start with urine, so little, urine strips that you can get for them chemist, and then we work up to either blood or to breath. And that gives us the actual barometer of are you in ketosis, as opposed to what a lot of people do is just, I'm eating these foods, therefore I'm in ketosis. But it absolutely doesn't work like that. Someone can be in ketosis and they're eating a wide variety of carbohydrates and their bodies are still producing ketones. And someone else has to be really low carbohydrate because of their metabolic issues within their body, and they can't eat much carbs at all. And so they have to go low and slow with the carbohydrates and move forward on that. And so when you're looking at, as the ketogenic diet's becoming more popular now, there's also a lot of foods out there and packaged foods and shakes and this and this and this. And so just be really mindful. It's actually not if the food is a keto food or not. That's got nothing to do with it. I find it hilarious that we see these bars and shakes and all these kinds of things that say keto. It's not what that food is. It's what your body does with it and whether your body is producing ketones or not whilst you're eating that particular food. And so we teach all these things on the Culture Wellness program about, how to measure what the levels are, all those kinds of things. But just remember, don't fall for the keto bar that's out there. Read the ingredients and be really kind of skilled up and knowledgeable. What will my body do with this? Will it be inflamed or will it support me? So really important. Okay, thanks. Thank you. And how low do you suggest we keep carbs? Should we each day on average? So Erin, that's such a great question because it kind of ties in with what I was just saying about it's about your body and how many carbs your body can handle. And so you go into just those really low carbohydrate vegetables, your green vegetables, and we have a shopping list on program. So we show you all those things and you'll have all those low carbohydrate vegetables. And then you'll test your ketones. And then we'll be like, oh, you're doing well. We can add some cooked and cooled rice in. We can add some other things in. So we don't know what your carbohydrate content will be for you until you get into that sort of our Kickstarter diet, and then we're measuring your ketones and we can see what works for you. And as opposed to saying, well, you can only have 20 grams of carbs a day, but you might be training for a marathon at the moment, or you might have a really sedentary job and you can't move much. That also depends how much carbs you have. So it's not all the keto stuff that's out there at the moment is really, really, really confusing. So it's really important to empower yourself and do programs like this where you can learn all of that knowledge. And then you really understand what your beautiful body needs. All right. If you ferment avocado, can you freeze it? Yes, you can. Oh, there's so much cheap avocado at the moment. Yes, beautiful. Okay, don't want to overconsume as too much fat. So Connie, consume as much fat as your beautiful body needs. So this whole concept of fat is the enemy and fat causes heart disease and fat causes cholesterol, that whole medical concept has been debunked in the research literature for a very long time now. And so integrative doctors and holistic doctors that are up to date with the latest research with regards to cholesterol and with regards to what drives inflammation in our bodies, we know that it's actually the carbohydrates and the sugar that drives that inflammation, and it's actually the good quality fats that put us into ketosis and flip off that inflammatory switch. So it's we want lots of good quality fat in our diet. So don't be scared of the fat. Embrace the fat. Feeds our brain and gives us so much energy. Okay. Oh, good, Erin. I'm so glad that was that made sense for you. All right, guys. Well, looks like Jade and Kylie are onto it, and they've covered all those questions for you. So once again, if you would like to find out more about the Culture Wellness programs, or if you would like to work out which program is right for me, make sure that you book a discovery call with me. So then I can sit down with you for 20 minutes and, I can listen to what's going on, and then I can say, look, this program's going to work great for you, or this program's going to work great. And I can really help you unpack what kind of care and support that you need. So take the advantage of those discovery calls. They're free. And then, it's sort of our gift to you to be able to help you to know where to go. So we only do these discovery calls. We do a lot of them during these workshop series. So make sure you take advantage of it and have a look at all of our programs. It'd be so cool to see you guys on there and learning and, really getting your bodies into that beautiful space of feeling energy again. It's a really nice place for you to get to. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Go and get some nice sleep. And I will catch you in the next live. See ya.